It's about 2 weeks before the preliminary elections here in Boston. We are going to the polls, of course, on September 24th to vote for mayor and city council. I'm here tonight with a few guests. We're going to start off the show with Representative Carlos Henriquez. Then we're going to have Representative Mike Moran, followed by Representative Michlewitz and Senator Anthony Petruccelli. If you have a question during any portion of the show, feel free to call in 617-708-3290. I want to welcome you, Representative, back to the show. You, of course, have been on the show many times.
Thanks for having me, as always.
Tonight is a little different because we're not really focused on you and the work that you do up at the State House, but we're talking about the mayor's race and also a little bit about the at-large city council race. So for the mayor's race, we have a huge field.
Right.
There are 12 people running, and I'm just going to run through the list to remind people at home who is on the ballot. Felix Arroyo, current city councilor, John Barrows, Charles Clemens, DA Dan Conley, City Councilor at Large John Conley, City Councilor Rob Consalvo, Charlotte Goler-Ritchie, City Councilor Mike Ross, Bill Walczak, Representative Marty Walsh, David James Wyatt, and City Councilor Charles Yancey.
It's a pretty good list.
It is a huge list, as we've mentioned. So what was your initial thought when Mayor Menino announced that he wasn't going to be running again?
My initial thought was, what's next? And you kind of knew that there had been so much talent in the city for so long that was looking for a shot like this, that you would have this kind of race once he stepped down. So it's interesting, and I think it's good for the city. It's healthy.
So there are a number of city councilors who are running. This is going to completely change the face of the Boston City Council. So let's talk a little bit about that before we start talking about the mayor's race. So were you surprised that so many city councilors decided to throw their hat in the ring?
Not at all. There's an old saying, I'm not sure where it started, but there is a saying that every person that's run for the city council or served on the city council has dreams of being the mayor. Mm-hmm. And I think that holds true when you see it. I think, what do we have, 5?
Yep, I think there's
I believe 5 out of the 13 running. And you probably have a few more if it wasn't such a big field. So it didn't surprise me at all.
And you also, I just want to mention that Charles Yancey is not only running for mayor, but he's also running to retain his seat.
That's right. I believe the members of District 4 can vote for him twice.
They can, and as he says, it's twice as nice. So let's talk a little bit about the mayor's race. So for you as a representative and also as a citizen of Boston, what are some of the qualities that you're looking in for the next mayor?
So I have two lenses I look through. I look through it as I try to let my job override my personal desire. So I'm looking from the perspective of my district, the 5th Suffolk neighborhoods of Dorchester and Roxbury, and the issues that are faced by my constituents, and who do I think will be the best leader to work on those issues with me as a partner at the state level, and also with the residents of those neighborhoods as well. Personally, there's a whole slew of things. I mean, I think that a lot to do with Dorchester and Roxbury has to do with the entire city. And to work on the issues in the district will kind of serve as a microcosm, and if people can roll that out into the whole city, it'll benefit the entire city.
Well, and there are a lot of issues in Dorchester and Roxbury, namely violence, crime. So that, I don't want to put words in
education, poverty.
Exactly.
Yep.
So these are top issues for you.
Top social issues, I think, and I would like them to be top issues for the entire city.
Mm-hmm. Well, and they should be, actually, because everything that, whatever's happening in one neighborhood certainly happens in another neighborhood.
Absolutely.
We've seen that clearly throughout this year with violence in different neighborhoods, and education is important for, obviously, every family who's got kids in the Boston public school system. Speaking of education, so charter schools has come up a lot. What is your take on that whole argument, whether we should lift the cap on charter schools, if the Boston public schools should be once again given the chance to find their way?
Right. So I in the past, I have supported, and it's very tricky language. We talk about lifting the cap or raising the cap, and I don't know if everybody understands what that means. So we had a cap on it, a limit, and I think it was 2 years ago I supported raising that cap a little higher. Right now, what the legislation has proposed is removing the cap, which means that you can open up a charter school kind of wherever you want. I liken it to open up a corner store on any corner if you really wanted to. That I am not in support of. I do want parents to have choice. I do want parents to have good education for their children, but I don't want to do it at the detriment of the Boston public school system.
So I don't, with this argument, I just don't see a good way to get to where people want to be in terms of how schools should run in the city?
Well, there's things that have to be done first. We have to fix the funding formula at the state level to make sure that charter schools don't have an advantage that Boston Public Schools don't have. And we need to balance the playing field in terms of purchasing property, owning property, the funding formula per student. And I think once we start to fix those and make sure that there's standardization across the board in terms of being able to access some, we know access won't be the same, but discipline as well. Boston Public Schools is always going to be the default. It is the Boston Public School system. It is our only public school system. Right. So they don't have the option of going through applications or, divvying people up the same way other schools are able to. So we have to figure out and make sure it's a balanced playing field. We don't want to create we have systems within BPS in terms of exam schools and top performing schools and substandard schools, and we're working on that. We don't need to add another tier to that would confuse things.
I agree with that 100%. The other night, Dan Conley was given a lot of grief because he sends his kids to a private school. Do you think that matters in the mayor's race, whether or not, if he's elected mayor, do you think that he should then pull his kids out of parochial school and put them in public school? Well,
if we're going to be honest about it, I think it matters. If I was a campaign consultant, it would matter because I think that the average Bostonian doesn't have that luxury. A lot of people are moving out of Boston because they don't have that luxury. So I think that sends a message. However, I think it's his right to send his children wherever he'd like to send them. But politically, I do think it sends a message. How that will impact voters, I'm not sure yet.
Right. There's also been a lot of talk about, we have one woman in the race, Charlotte Gola-Ritchie, and today there was an article in the Herald talking about she is the dark horse candidate, perhaps. If she becomes one of the two finalists, women and minority voters will flock to her. Do you think that's true?
I think that's a stretch. I understand we're in Boston and we're not in, as much as people would like to believe, we're in a post-racial society. We're not there yet, and people are still very much voting based on identity voting. Mm-hmm. But that's not to say that any one nationality or race is a monolith, and that all white Irish Catholics are going to vote for a white Irish Catholic, and then all African Americans are going to vote for African American, or Latinos for Latinos. I don't think it's that simple. I think people are a lot more intelligent, and people are going to make their decisions based on a candidate they can feel has reached out to them, that understands them and understands the issues and can lead on their issues. And I think that trumps everything else. I think that trumps gender. I think it trumps race.
Yeah, I think you're 100% correct. I mean, Felix Arroyo, he's Latino, and I think people assume that all Latinos would flock around Felix, and I'm not hearing that on the street. I'm not seeing that.
I'm glad it's not true, because as someone that is Latino and African American, it would put me I would be pretty split if that was the truth, right? So, I really think it comes down to issues and messaging and what kind of campaign people are running. There's that part of it, and then there's also the logistics of a ground game. What we politicians call a ground game is really getting out and knocking doors and engaging voters, not just with your surrogates and your volunteers, but also person to person. I rarely vote for someone whose hand I haven't shaken. In
a field this big, do you think we've heard about polls coming out, this one's on top, this one's in second, this one's, fourth. Do you think that in a field this big, we can actually take those polls and really put some weight into them?
I would take most of those polls and throw them out the window. The one thing that's consistent in those polls are 40% undecided,
right?
Which means almost half is undecided. So the numbers that are there, you can pretty much discount them.
Right.
I think they give you a rough idea of where things are, but I think a lot of people are going to make their decision. They might not be willing to share it. That's the other thing about having so many candidates is you're literally running against your neighbor as well in some neighborhoods. Right. So I might have been able to support District Attorney Conley and Robert Consalvo for the last decade, and now I have to support only one of them.
Right.
So if both volunteers show up I might not put up a yard sign because I don't want to offend either one of them.
Yep.
And if both volunteers show up at my door one Saturday and one Sunday, I might not have the heart to say, I'm not with either one of you. I might say I'm with both of you, and you both mark me down as a one.
Exactly.
And then you won't know until I show up. So I think all the numbers are pretty much skewed.
Well, and I think you're also seeing people who are saying, oh, I'm with so-and-so because they have a personal relationship. They're saying that publicly, but privately, they're going somewhere else.
Right.
So it's
and you have to respect the people have the right to their privacy and however they cast their ballot between them and their ballot.
Yep. So now on tonight's show, I'm having, as I mentioned earlier, 4 elected officials from the state level. I'm giving you all an opportunity to talk about the candidate that you're backing.
You have some of the finest gentlemen from the Boston delegation coming on this evening.
I really am impressed with my talent booking skills for this week.
I think Arsenio Hall is probably the only one that has you beat this week in terms of talent booking.
I know, right? And earlier on Twitter, I don't know if you saw, but people were joking that the Patriots were going to have to delay kickoff because you guys were all coming on the show.
As they should.
So I called the Crafts and said, time out.
They should have called you, right?
I know, right? They should have been like, what's your schedule tonight? Because we don't want to interfere. But I'm going to give you an opportunity quickly to talk about who you're supporting and why you're supporting that candidate.
So I'm supporting my friend John Barrows. I've known John Barrows for about 20 years. We grew up in the same neighborhood. Our neighborhood was being decimated by arson for profit, redlining from banks, disinvestment. The crack epidemic hit when we were in our mid-teens. And I've done a lot of the work that I hear candidates talking about. I've seen John do it. I've lived with him doing it. I've done it with him. So it gives me an insight into what he has been able to do. And knowing our neighborhood and seeing the turnaround, whether it was around affordable housing, education, public safety, I've seen him do all of this work and build these bridges and consensus among residents and really doing it with residents in the lead role. So not kind of a lead from the top, but kind of stand with you right in the middle and walking the same way with you. And to me, it speaks volumes to see someone do it. I mean, there's a lot of great candidates in this race. Some of them specialize in certain areas. John, to me, he denied the other day, he said misconception that he's an urban policy geek. And he is an urban policy geek. He understands urban policy because he understands urban people. He understands coming from the city of Boston, being a kid growing up in the neighborhood. He understands what it means and what challenges we all face as working class people. And I think it puts him in a wonderful position to lead.
All right, and I just want to remind viewers at home that all of the candidates were invited to appear on the show. Most did. You can go to our YouTube channel or the Facebook page for All About Boston and watch the interviews from when they were on here before. Just wanted to mention that. So I know that there were some candidates who were not able to make it on the show, but they were all invited. Real quickly before we run out of time, the at-large race, we quickly touched on that. But is that another race that you see where it's just who knows how things are going to end up?
That race is a really tough race, and I'm glad. I feel bad for anyone that's in it that's brand new because it's such a tough race to break into. You've kind of been muted by the mayor's race. And not only that, but the mayor's race has sucked all the volunteers out of the city. So it's hard to get your message out. It's hard to get volunteers that aren't committed to this, bigger race. Yep. But I think this is just as important. I mean, this is the city council. They're going to be voting on legislation. They're going to be moving forward with this new mayor. So I think people do need to pay attention. It's going to take a little bit more homework from the voters rather than waiting for it to come to you, but you're going to have to do your homework.
Exactly. And I'm going to give a plug back to this show, but also to David Bernstein, who has done candidate chats with all of the at-large candidates. If you go to bostonmagazine.com, you can look up all those chats so you can read about what the different candidates are saying. And again, you can go to our Facebook page or the YouTube channel to watch those videos here as well, to hear from all of the at-large candidates. It's really an exciting time to be in the city, so I'm just hoping, as you know, I've talked about this when you've been here as a guest, voter turnout. I'm hoping that it'll be a nice day.
I think it'll be up. And you have some district races too. I mean, you have District 5, you have highly contested races now because of those councilors that are now in the race have vacated their seats.
I know, so, and it's just exciting to see that there is going to be new energy at City Hall. It's very exciting. So I want to thank you for being on here again. And
thank you for having me.
Hopefully I'm going to have you on election night. So
I'm working on it. I'm going to be working hard that day for my guy, but I'm going to try to get some time if the bosses let me.
Yeah, but you know what? If you can come in here tonight when you're sick, then you can come in on election night.
I mean, the things we do to be on All About Boston.
Exactly. It's the place to be.
It is.
All right. Carlos, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
All right. And we will be right back with the Representative Michael Moran. Stay tuned. And welcome back to All About Boston. Continuing my night of the hottest representatives and senators in Boston is Representative Michael Moran. That was a horrible little segue, but I think by the time Aaron and Anthony come on, I'll have it perfected and it'll be much better.
Well, they are hot.
I mean,
me not so much.
Well, come on now. But I haven't had you on the show in forever, so I have to say congratulations on the baby.
Yes.
A nice little
Eleanor.
Eleanor.
She's very cute.
Yes, Eleanor is, of course.
And she looks exactly like her mother, thank God.
Well, thank
Yes.
goodness for that. Eleanor happens to be one of my aunt's names, so it's a beautiful name.
Yes, she's a cutie.
Absolutely. So we're here tonight. We're talking about the Boston mayor's race. This is an exciting time in the city, a lot of change happening. Also on the city council, we have a lot of open seats. But let's talk about the mayor's race. So I'm going to start off the same way I started off with Representative Henriquez, and that is to say, or to ask you, when you heard that the mayor was not going to be running for re-election, what was your first thought?
Uh-oh. No, I'm a big fan of the mayor. And I think what you see right now in this election is a little bit of Tom Menino hangover. And that is to say that I don't think people are ready to see another mayor.
Right.
When you look at the polls, there are 30, sometimes 35% undecided. You read the papers, and they're all saying that people aren't engaged.
Right.
We're 2 weeks away from the preliminary election, and people aren't engaged.
I know.
I really believe that people are sort of not ready to see Tom Menino go.
Right.
But that being said, he's leaving, and there's an election in less than 2 weeks. So I think all of us are surprised when he decided not to run. I think he's at peace with that decision. He has been a steady hand at the throttle of the ship for 20 years and has done a magnificent job, in my opinion. Sad to see him go, but I understand why he left.
Do you think the next mayor will have as long a tenure as he did?
No, I don't actually. He was a unique individual in how he came to the office. So he worked his way up in government, being on the city council president, acting mayor, and all of those stops along the way allowed him to get to know at every level all the people that worked in government. So by the time he actually became the mayor, people were comfortable with him. I think that this is going to be a totally different situation. I think times have changed in 20 years with technology,
Right.
blogs,
Right.
Websites. All that stuff has been new and actually all happened underneath this mayor. I think there's going to be more scrutiny on this next mayor. I just don't see another person, especially in this field, that is going to want to probably stay there for 20 years. Tom Menino, it was his, you never heard of him running for governor. You never heard of him running for U.S. Senate. He was mayor, and that's all he wanted to be. That was the job he wanted, and he did it very well. And I don't think you'll see that in this next crop of candidates. I think you may see, with technology and heightened criticism, I don't think you'll see a 20-year mayor happen.
Right. There's been a lot of talk that some voters may want the next closest thing to Mayor Menino. Do you think that holds true, or do you think people are ready for a complete change? And do you think that the candidates out there offer that complete change, or are they all just similar versions of Mayor Menino?
I don't think you want this to be the Tom Menino show, but that question leads me to say that he's a unique mayor in the fact that if he didn't come to the mayor's race, if he didn't come to the way he won it by becoming acting mayor, if it was an open seat the way it is now, I got to be honest with you, I don't think he would have won. Right. Because we all know the limitations that the mayor has. He was never a big fundraiser. He didn't have all the things that are necessary to run for mayor. So how he came into the job was perfect for Tom Menino. So I think that none of the candidates in this field have that kind of connection to the city the way Tom Menino does, in my opinion.
Yeah. There are a lot of issues that are on the table now that people are discussing that are similar to issues that were happening 20 years ago. Violence in the city seems to be on an uptick. The public school system needs to be fixed. How do you think that the next person who becomes mayor should be tackling those issues?
Well, I mean, when you're running for mayor and there's an open seat, you have to look at what services and what does the mayor do. So the mayor is responsible for basic city services. He's responsible for police, fire, and school. So anytime a seat's open, That's what everybody criticizes, right? Because you can't criticize him on his position on Syria
Right.
because that's not what the mayor does. So you're going to criticize him on the things, or the discussion is, in the debate's going to be around the things that the mayor can control. Right. So do I think the mayor has moved an agenda that has improved our schools? Absolutely. A safer city? Absolutely. Basic city services are better. Parks and open space is better. I think the mayor has done a wonderful job in that area. The next mayor, what are they going to do in that area? What are they going to do as far as development, moving the waterfront forward, all the areas of growth in the city of Boston? How are they going to continue to make that growth while living within the confines of these neighborhoods that we all live in? And that's the trick. That's the challenge for any mayor, is how do you grow a city but yet not forget about the people who sort of make up the city.
Right, exactly.
The long-term residents, the neighborhoods, the people that have been there for a long, long time. How do you respect them but also move a city forward?
When you're looking at the candidates, though, do you see real differences between what they're saying out there? First of all, number one, it's hard to hear from all of them unless you're tuning into this show.
Yeah.
Because at the forums, I mean, you know, we see it every other night or every night. You have 12 candidates on a stage trying to get a little bit of airtime, if you will. So it's really difficult for each and every one of them to get that message out there.
It's extremely difficult for them to get that message out there. You know, quite oftentimes in every political race, maybe sometimes the best person doesn't move on to the next part of the election. That's good, that's bad, that's up to the electorate. When I look at this field of candidates, there is a few who would be a stark difference in style than the mayor. There are some that are very similar to the mayor. There are some that are kind of a throwback, going back to, you know, mayors of the past, Flynn and Collins and people like that, who were the head of the city for years. So they all kind of have a different cachet or a different persona. And I'm not sure, and I think all the polls will tell you, I'm not really sure what the city is looking for right now, because basically, you know, minus a few people at the bottom, every poll has this as a statistical dead heat, inside the margin of error. So I don't. It's going to be interesting to see who wins this thing and where they take the city in the coming years.
It's fascinating to me, and I know it's fascinating to you because this is stuff that you live, breathe, and eat. I mean,
yeah, it's good stuff. It really is. I mean, it's, you know, in the end of the day, this crop of candidates, I think on 1 minute past the hour on election night will be as shocked with the results as we all will be.
Right.
Because I just don't see anybody with a presumptive, overwhelming lead that is going to, you know, guarantee them a spot in the finals. I mean, I think there's 5 or 6 candidates that on election night could be in the finals.
Who are those 5 or 6? Do you want to name?
I think it obviously starts with the top tier, which is Charlotte Golarici, Marty Walsh, John Conley, Dan Conley. That seems to be the top tier, with Robbie Consalvo right behind. And then behind him would be, you know, Ross and Consalvo and that crew. I don't really see the people in the polls that have really not registered more than a couple of percentage points growing beyond that.
Right.
So I see that as being the race, that group of people.
But even those candidates who are only taking a few percentage points of the votes, that could impact.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it impacts all of them.
Sure.
So.
I mean, every person that goes in and votes is a percentage point off of somebody.
Right.
Who we don't know. I
Right.
mean, there are people that would say that, oh, well, this person's votes should have gone this way, and you know, I don't really like to speculate on that. You know, that kind of puts the voters in a box that I don't think is fair.
Right.
I assume that these people, when they go to the polls, have decided based upon what they've seen and what they've heard, to say that if this person that they voted for wasn't in the race, that they would have gone somewhere else. I don't think it's fair to say.
Right.
I never think that's fair to say, whether it be a mayor's race or any other race.
Right. It also will be really interesting to find out after election night whose people go with what final 2 candidates.
Yeah, I think, and it seems to be the prevailing thought that that if nobody really wants to face Charlotte in the final, I don't think, and I think because she has such a wide appeal, you know, with the women and with the minorities and with the, you know, people who are looking for a change, which is drastic. I mean, we've had 53 mayors in the city of Boston's history. All of them have been white men, you know, the minority population has grown every year in the city of Boston. So I think most people look at her and are a little bit. The other candidates look at her and say, "Oh, geez, I don't think I want to face her in the final." You know, she is somebody who I think is sort of, and if you read the papers, everyone sort of agrees that she's kind of the wild card in this whole thing. The more consistent candidates come from the more established communities.
Right.
You know, the South Boston Dorchester candidate, you know, the West Roxbury, Hyde Park, Rosendale candidates. You know, geographically, and then you know, they have a base of support that's out there, which allows them to be considered for this job immediately upon them deciding to run.
Right. Which, that was something that Representative Henriquez and I were talking about, is that, you know, you have certain neighborhoods who have maybe supported Dan Conley and Rob Consalvo, and they're now split. So let's say, you know, there's Jane, who's a homeowner, and she all her life has voted for Dan as the DA and Rob as her city councilor, and now she doesn't know where to go because she likes both of them. So there's a lot of that happening as well. So it's just very
West
very
Roxbury, Ward 20, well, I'm going to talk wards, but West Roxbury, which is part of Ward 20, and Rosendale, which is part of Ward 20, and Hyde Park, and Mattapan, which is Ward 18. You know, there's a lot of votes in those two wards, but it's not clear where they're all going to go.
Right.
I think it's fair to say that John Conley is going to do well in Ward 20, but how well? And how much is Robbie taken away from him? Sorry, how much is Robbie Consalvo taken away from him? How much is Dan Conley taken away from him? How much is Marty Walsh taken away from him?
Right.
You know, West Roxbury has a old school, long-term resident Irish population, which Marty, I think, is playing hard for. And I think he's been pretty successful in that ward. Ward 18, you know, how much of the Italian vote in Ward 18 is left, and how much of it does Robbie get? How much of the long-term Hyde Park residents in Ward 18 does Robbie get? You know, is Robbie able to get into Mattapan and get some votes there? You know, away from Charlotte or away from, you know, Councilor Yancey. So it's a mathematical equation that none of us know yet. So
none of us will know
until the day.
September 24th.
Exactly.
And even then, you know, I mean, because you've done this for so many different campaigns for so many different years, at what point in the day are you going to be able to determine, okay, this is how it's probably going to look?
I don't, you know, usually when you see turnouts, you're able to make some pretty good guesses on who is going to receive what and what the end is going to look like. I don't think that there is any turnout that will show us at all throughout the day who is going to win this election. There are precincts that you can pull out and say, just show me the results in that precinct and I will tell you what's happening and how likely it is that person can win. But as far as turnout, when you have 12 people with pulling from bases from across the city, it's really tough to say, based upon turnout alone, what the results in the end are going to be.
What about the at-large race? Because that's another race that has a lot of different people, a lot of different...
18, I think it is?
Yeah. So it's, I mean, 19 people actually did
19
just talk
total?
to me in my
Oh,
ear.
yeah.
So that's another race that, I mean, it could end up many different ways. Do you see a lot of that? Obviously, we have two incumbents, Council President Murphy and City Councilor Presley. Do you think that they're safe? Do you think that there could be some shakeup?
I would imagine they'd be safe. I mean, my gut tells me that they're going to be safe, simply because of the breadth of the field and their bases that they come into the race with. So I would think they'd be safe. After that, you know, you can only go on what you see and who's the most active. You know, certainly Michelle Wu has been out there stumping for a long time and is somebody who I think has a good chance of making the finals, the final 8, and maybe a good chance of winning. You know, I think, you know, certainly former City Councilor Mike Flaherty, you'd have to look at him. You know, he didn't win a spot last time around. He came in 5th. But in this field with so many candidates and a base of South Boston and Dorchester, I would think he'd make the finals,
And
final 8.
Yep.
But just because you make the final 8, then it shakes up again.
Exactly.
Who knows what happens? Because then people have the chance to kind of look at, right now, 19 candidates. No one's really looking at those because the mayor's race.
Yep.
But in the end, when you have 2 mayoral candidates and 8 at-large candidates, then you start to focus on it a little more. So I think the trick is now, how do we get to the finals in the at-large race? If you're running, how can I get to the finals? And once you're in the finals, then you sort of recalibrate your strategy, and then from September to November, what do you do?
Right, exactly. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here tonight to talk about the race. It's, as we've talked about, a very exciting time in the city.
Yeah.
And just to remind people to vote on September 24th. And we're going to be right back with Representative Michlewitz and Senator Anthony Petruccelli. Stay tuned. And welcome back to All About Boston. I just want to remind viewers at home that if you wanted to watch any of this show in its entirety after tonight, you can go to our YouTube channel or the Facebook page. You can also find previous interviews with the mayoral candidates, most of them, and the at-large candidates up until Election Day, which is September 24th. I want to welcome now 2 of my favorite guests. No offense to my 2 guests that just left, but Representative Michlewitz and Senator Anthony Petruccelli are on the show now. So welcome. This is actually, Senator Petruccelli, your first time on the show.
Yeah, my inaugural appearance.
I know, which is shocking because I've known you forever. So
Pleased to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we're going to talk a little bit about the mayor's race, which is, of course, what we're talking about all night long, and also a little bit about the at-large race. So you are both representing pretty much similar boundaries in the city of Boston, East Boston, the North End, Bay Village, parts of Beacon Hill, Chinatown.
Yep. South End.
South End, yeah.
But you're both supporting different candidates for mayor. So Representative Michlewitz, I'm going to start with you. Who are you supporting and why?
So I'm supporting Charlotte Golar-Ritchie for mayor. She's someone that I've worked with in the past on different issues on the city and state level. And also just know that I feel comfortable knowing that with her unique experience and her unique qualifications will be someone that will be ready to take on the job day one. Had run a city agency under Mayor Menino for 7 or 8 years, dealing with budgets and a lot of employees and dealing with the day-to-day basics issues that come with those city agencies. And what more important issue is the next mayor going to face when they take over? It's going to be giving us quality of life issues on the ground, and knowing how to operate amongst the that realm, I think, is very important, and something that I think really Charlotte takes the cake in terms of being able to do that from day one.
And Senator Petruccelli, I know you have a different opinion, so who are you supporting?
Well, I might have a different opinion, but Aaron supports a real good qualified candidate. Charlotte's a friend, and a lot of the candidates that are in the campaign are good friends of mine. They're all very qualified. But Rob Consalvo, in my opinion, having worked at all 3 levels of government, federal, state, and city government, has been an effective leader on the city council for the past 10 plus years, where he has delivered real change, real policy change, and that's not necessarily a real easy thing to do at the city council level all the time. And I think if everyone looks at the resume of accomplishments of the city council, and you look at John's Law, foreclosure ordinances, shot spotter ordinances, Rob Consalvo has a real strong resume, and I think he'd be a great mayor of the city of Boston.
So I have to assume that the 2 of you have a lot of the same base in your roles. So when you're going out and you're talking to people who support both of you for your different races, are you like fighting with each other to get those votes?
Well, no, I mean, I don't think...
Friendly fight, I would say.
Aaron's a big bully on arm twister. I try persuasion, with real good talking points, and then he kind of twists arms.
Twist arms, that's what we do in the house? No,
You said it, not me.
No, it's we're having fun with it. Yeah. I mean, obviously, like Anthony said, there's a lot of good candidates in this race, and there's a lot of good people, and we've worked with all of them in different areas over the years. And so, when we're going out there, with trying to getting our voters that have been supportive of us over the years to get them to see our side on this issue, it's challenging, but it's fun, and we're joking around with it. We were joking around with it on the ride over here, and we're having a good time with it. It's not us on the ballot, so we can do that,
Exactly.
But it's an ongoing process, and it's been fun, and we're enjoying it.
So you must not be able to really count the votes, though, very accurately, because I'm sure Mrs. whatever, Mrs. Connie might be saying, oh yes, I'm going to be with your girl. And then she's saying to you, oh no, I'm with your guy. So
They are doing that a lot to Anthony. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, you know what? You can, if you look at history, right, and this is before our time, but the Kevin 7, right, story taught people that you really can't transfer votes, right? Kevin White was mayor, and he tried to get a slate of 7 people to run for city council and take over the city council, and I don't think any of them won, right?
Right.
And so even, Aaron and I, very fortunately, we have done very well in our elections. People like and respect the work that we do, but you can't make people vote for someone unless they really want to vote for that person. So we try real hard to advocate for our candidates, but in the end, you can't transfer your vote that you have gotten to somebody else. And people sometimes will take great exception if you really push too hard. So we're careful with that.
I think the term that I've been using is I hope you see what I see. I see good things in my candidate. I see why my candidate would be, a great mayor. I just hope that my constituency can see what I see, and if they do, they hopefully will, vote for her.
Were you shocked that there were so many good candidates that came out of the woodwork as soon as Mayor Menino decided that he wasn't going to run again?
Yeah,
And I
want
to, before you answer that, I want to remind voters that City Councilor John Conley actually announced before Mayor Menino said that he wasn't going to run for re-election.
Yes, I am surprised. I think that there were a lot of people that were watching initially when there were, this many candidates out there, that the field would probably maybe get winnowed down a little bit before the preliminary election. So I give a lot of credit to the people that are out there, and particularly some of the first-time candidates, and someone like Rob, who's giving up his city council seat with a wife and 3 kids at home and no other job to turn to, and there's a few other candidates like that. So it says a lot about their desire to be mayor, and I think for people that are putting their name on a ballot in a race like this, it's very unpredictable what the turnout's going to be. I give them a lot of credit for doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 12 people is a lot of people, and it's very unique and really unprecedented in anything that we've seen in any election. So it's made it very challenging for anybody to actually predict or understand or know what's going to actually happen because of so many candidates. You would think that it would have gotten smaller over time, but I think that's proven to be to show exactly how good those candidates have become.
Right.
And they've gotten, and a lot of them have gotten better as the race has gone on.
I think back in '93, right, there were some candidates that were in the race, and then after a certain point, they decided to get out and either run for something else or just not pursue it. So to see everyone stay in for the most part was a little surprising, yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're right, because there's so many different people running. I mean, we were talking about this when Mike Moran was on. You really have no idea how the votes are going to turn out on Election Day. And I also should mention for people at home that Charles Clemens also announced before Mayor Menino decided not to run for re-election. So that was 2 of the current candidates that had announced before that time. But it's really interesting and exciting to watch because you really have no idea. I mean, there might be a couple of candidates that you can say, oh, well, they're probably not going to get the necessary votes to be in that top tier.
Yep.
But for the rest of them, it's anybody's game.
Well, the polls have had anywhere from 4 to 6 candidates within the margin of error.
Right.
And so really depending upon turnout and where the turnout is derived from, it is a too close to call race right now.
Yeah, and you know what? Truthfully, in my opinion, and I don't know if you guys have differing opinions. I assume that you may, but polls to me. Some people could get a call from a pollster and they're going to just say whatever they think that person wants to hear. So even that is just, and obviously there is the margin of error, but if somebody's getting a call and they know it's from X candidate and they maybe don't like that candidate, they might skew it just to give them some false sense of security.
As they always say, the only poll that matters is the one that comes out at 8 o'clock on Election Day. And I think everyone's going to be working towards that no matter where they stand in the polls because, like Anthony said, it is so bunched up from almost top to, even to the 7th or 8th candidate in the polls.
Right. Do you think, though, you just mentioned the time, obviously polls close at 8, but do you think we're going to hear by even 9 o'clock who the top 2 are going to be? I mean, because it's so close, depending on how voter turnout is, we might not hear anything until 11, 12.
Yeah, you
Is
might
that
not.
possible?
You might
I
not.
don't think it'll be that long of a night,
10
but
maybe?
maybe 10. You know, I mean, I think I'm going back to '09 and Menino Flaherty. That was pretty much announced around 9 o'clock from what I can recall.
Yeah.
And that's basically, you know, getting the numbers and bringing them into the city or into the election department. 256 precincts, getting those numbers, you know, tallied in. But because it's going to be tight, it will probably be a little longer than usual. So I mean, my guess is somewhere around 10 o'clock, you'd probably get an understanding of who the top two are going to be.
gonna
I think
be-
definitely the top one you'll know within the first hour, but I think the second one's going to take a little longer to
It's going to be
shake out.
it's going to be a long, exciting night.
yeah.
Speaking of Michael Flaherty, he is running again to be on the Boston City Council. There are 19 people running for the at-large seat.
Are there that many, really?
19. So that's
Glad you did your homework.
exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's another race where
Yeah.
it could really come down to the wire. I mean, you could sort of assume that the incumbents are going to be okay. So then you have still 6 people who are going to be on that final ballot. Do you have any guesses as to how that might shake out?
I think, you know, a lot of people have been saying that it's really going to happen by accident because of so many people running, the 19 people running for council, the 12 people running for mayor, and then you have district seats going on
Yeah.
as well. That a lot of things are going to shake out, especially in that race, by accident. You know, I think you have the 2 incumbents that are, at least for this first round, which should feel pretty solid. I think Michael Flaherty, because of his name recognition, you know, should be somewhat, you know, comfortable in terms of making the final 8. And then I think after that, I think you know, Michelle Wu has been working really hard and seems to have infrastructure all over the city of Boston. But outside of that, I really wouldn't have any clue on who the next 4 would be to make the cut.
Yeah, I mean, from again, just in my small neighborhood in East Boston, the candidates that Aaron mentioned, I've seen working. They've got some visible presence. Phil Frattaroli has got some visible presence in East Boston on the north end. Jack Kelly does as well. And so, you know, who knows? But 19, wow, that's a...
Jack Kelly actually has a lot of good endorsements too.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Jack's
He's
been working very hard.
Yep.
Yeah, those
And-
folks. Anissa George has been over in East
Yep.
Boston. Very good, qualified candidate. I mean, those are the folks that I've seen.
Yeah.
Marty Keogh actually.
Marty
has
Keogh's been
actually
working
made it,
hard.
you know, on the other side of the harbor as well a few
Yep.
times. I've seen Marty. I can't say I've seen, you know, some of the other folks. I don't want to offend anyone, but my God, 19, I didn't realize that.
Amen.
I think one
Know that
thing
many.
that Phil Frattaroli definitely has going from is he's been able to raise more money than break away in terms of money raised out of that maybe after the incumbents tier.
Right. Wasn't that shocking? That was, I mean, he's a great candidate, but I was shocked by that. I was really surprised that he was able, I mean, that he raised so much money.
Catherine O'Neill, one of our former colleagues, is
Yes,
running too. I
that's
saw
right.
her at East Boston High, actually. A dear friend, very
Yep.
qualified woman
Yep.
for office, yes.
And she was on the show before, and so you and I worked in neighborhood services together. Catherine was there as well. And when she was on the show, I said to her that, you know, if that's a natural progression from having that job, so you actually know
Yes.
what it takes to be a city councilor. That's, I mean, other than writing legislation, a neighborhood coordinator pretty much does the same job as a...
Great training ground for me.
Absolutely.
Neighborhood services.
Yeah, and you're talking to 2 people that worked, you know, for elected officials,
Yeah.
you know, for years before we both ran, and I think both times when we ran, we trumped that up to say that was important to be able to know the job and be able to know, you know, being an elected official and how to deal with it,
Yeah.
and so I think that's an important quality.
I think there are actually 3 former administration people, Mayor Menino administration people who are running: Jack Kelly, Ramon Soto, and Catherine O'Neill.
Oh, yes, Ramon.
So Ramon's another one
Ramon's
who
another
has that knowledge of how the city works, and it's you know, again though, it's anybody's game because who knows what's going to happen
Yeah.
on September 24th.
Yeah, I mean, I would be lying to you if I had any idea exactly what's going to shake
This is
out.
probably not the time to put bets on any of these races, right?
No, we don't.
There was one thing we could make a bet on.
We have made a bet on one thing, and that
Which
was
is?
the turnout.
Oh,
On the
yeah.
number of the turnout. You know,
Well, I want to hear what that is because, of course, when you come on my show, that's one of the things I talk about is how people need to get out and vote. So,
Yes.
and I'm always curious to see how many people actually vote during not only the mayoral elections, but the off-year city council elections. We've just had a bunch of special elections, which is always disappointing at the dismal number of people who go vote for those races. But so, what's the guess?
So the over/under is 115,000 people. Anthony has taken the under. I am more of the civic-minded, think that we should, engage the voters more, and I'm hoping for the over. So I've put my money,
Hoping. Keyword, hoping. I'm more realistic. And I just, I think the presidential election number was 130,000+
Yeah.
people in November. The mayor's final race against Michael Flaherty was like 112. The preliminary was 80-something, 82 or 84, 89.
I'm hearing in my ear, Rep Moran is still piping in, and he said it was 250,000.
What was?
The Obama race or presidential?
Presidential race was
250,000.
yeah, that sounds about right.
So-
I don't think the presidential race was 130.
Oh, all right. Well, maybe I have to adjust my numbers. All right.
Thank you, Rep Moran.
Was it really?
Now, I don't know if he's just saying
It
that
sounded good
because-
when I was saying it.
He might just be saying that because he and Aaron are supporting the same candidate, so he
Yeah.
might just want you to
They-
lose.
I think, yeah, young Aaron, I think expects that his preferred candidate benefits from a higher turnout. Maybe he's right, but I don't think it's going to go above 115.
I've looked at the numbers over the last couple of years of different elections, and I just think that over 115 is doable. Will it happen? I don't know, because one thing I've actually seen along the campaign trail and been talking to people is that a lot of people are nervous to make a wrong decision,
Right.
and therefore don't want to be kind of are kind of not being as engaged as they typically would be for another race, and then maybe when it gets down to two, they will make a more educated, what they feel educated choice.
That's what I was just going to say, because I've talked to a number of my friends who are saying there's just too much to choose from, and these are not really political people, so I get it, but that's scary that they're saying I might sit out and wait until it's down to those two final choices before I even go vote.
I think that, and I've talked to some folks the past couple of weeks, that is making me think that I'm in a good spot with my bet with Aaron, because there's a lot of people that were very engaged, I think, in the presidential election, the United States Senate election this past fall, on social media and with their friends, water cooler conversations, right, so to speak, and voted. And I just don't get the sense that there's a lot of people that were engaged in that process and voted in the presidential election that I just think are going to stay home for one reason or another in this election. I can't pinpoint why.
Right.
Maybe it is because there's just so many to choose from, and they'll come out maybe in the final election when it's down to 2.
I would say on the plus side is the fact that you do have 12 people running. A lot of them have organization across the city, and they'll be pulling vote on election day, which hopefully increases the pie. I think, at least from my perspective, hopefully increases the pie, because at least in my neighborhood alone, you're going to have a handful of candidates that have organizations that are going to be working the streets on that election day, and you wouldn't get that if it was only 4 or 5 candidates,
Very
potentially.
true.
Yeah.
So you guys didn't mention what you were betting, so I'm going to offer.
He doesn't pay his bets anyways
because-
when he loses, because I've beaten him a few times recently, and
Every
I'm still
week-
waiting to collect.
Every week I try to plug my favorite ice cream place. So I'm going to say that whoever loses has to buy the other one some ice cream from FOMU, which is located in JP on Center Street.
I would
Sounds
take
good.
that. Yeah.
See?
Sounds good.
What's your
Done.
favorite flavor?
Oh my gosh, there's so many to choose from. They have like a salted caramel, they have cookies and cream. It's vegan, by the way, so not to shock you. Now, Anthony's like, what's that? What does that mean? Dairy-free, so it's good for you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you definitely have to check it out if you have not already, which
How fun is dairy-free ice cream?
it's delicious. It's the best thing ever. So you have to do it.
Sounds
So
healthy.
It is very healthy.
All
It's
right.
very good for you, and that's your bet now. So see, now
Okay.
you don't have to worry about actual money changing hands. It can just be ice cream cones or something.
We were thinking more along the lines of a steak. Complete opposite of where you were going.
Yeah, completely opposite.
Which he still hasn't paid back yet.
Maybe this is what we should do from now on. We should have you on so you guys can settle your bets on air. Guilt.
And the whole world knows that.
I would take that.
You can guilt Aaron into paying up
I
on
would take that
his bets.
this way he can't spin it. It's good.
See, it's perfect. Yeah. This is going downhill
Yeah, it's fast.
Seriously fast. I want to thank both of you for being on the show tonight. It's been a pleasure to have both of you. I want to thank also Representative Henriquez and Representative Moran for coming on. We are looking forward to, of course, the final results on September 24th. A reminder, please go out and vote. And again, if you want to check out any of the mayoral candidates or at-large candidates, you can watch our program on YouTube or on the Facebook channel. And also, again, another plug for David Bernstein. He did a great job doing candidate chats with at-large city councilors as well as district city council candidates. So definitely check out that on bostonmagazine.com. We'll see you next time.